Guys, I'm excited to bring Rene to us. Hey, Rene, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for that, Boda. And when you hear that, it's a mouthful, but it's more more mouthful than really what it looks like.
Right.
But thank you so much for mentioning all this.
No, it's awesome. Can you walk us through your career? I know there's a lot that you've accomplished, being a global business leader. Can you tell us, share some of those, your career highlight with us so that my audience, they can get to know you better?
Yeah, it's interesting. When my kids ask me about my career, I say, guys, the career that I had was kind of not the one that I would recommend you
Oh,
to. Uh, I started my career as a tax lawyer in the Netherlands, and actually, when I had to choose what career I wanted before going to university, my passion was history.
mm,
But and this is in the previous century, in the 70s, with history, you could become a teacher. And my big ego that when I was 18 years old, I said, well, teacher, that's not a good job. Let's study tax law. I can make a lot of money doing that. But I had no affinity to it and really no passion. So I studied diligently, became a tax lawyer, and I worked several years for a very large Dutch international tax law firm in the Netherlands, in Hong Kong, and then in Curaçao, in the Netherlands, Antilles. But I realized that was not my passion. I really, and I could see that through the eyes of my colleagues. There were colleagues, they came, every Monday morning we had kind of team meetings and we spoke about the latest developments and they spoke about it with so much passion about, all the Supreme Court, jurisprudence that they read about and case studies and whatever. And, I rather drank a beer with my friends and played a match of soccer or hockey with them in the weekend than reading the technical literature. And that's where I realized that my passion was not there. So I jumped from that into business development, which I had more of a hang for. And when I made that choice of kind of choosing not what pays best, but what I'm really good at, then my career took off pretty soon. And so my first job in business development, I got a second job working for a very large. That job brought me to Argentina, by the way. And then I was hired by an Argentine family. They looked for a Dutch guy with legal background to drive their business out of Switzerland. So I took on that job, and from there I moved into banking. And since I had already lived so internationally and had some big experience before that, when I was 33 years old, when I entered into the banking world, my career was that particular that they didn't really know how to put me in the box of the 33-year-old academical MBA type of guys. And I could negotiate a much higher position. I mean, I would say two, three steps above what typically a 33-year-old person would be it was in the UBS, a large bank. And I became one of the youngest managing directors in that organization, but especially because of the skill set that I had built up through the different steps in my career that I had taken. And then I finished my career basically in Deutsche Bank. I became head of global wealth management there in Switzerland. That's where I decided to move to South America. I was looking for greener pastures, something different. I worked then 8 years for Citibank as a family and corporate governance champion, they called that, for Latin American clients. And that's where I decided to really step out of corporate life and to start, to hang out literally my shingle as a coach and a family business advisor. So that's a bit of my career. But the big takeaway for me was that I studied something that I really didn't like, and I
uh,
just did it because out of my perceived thought that if I do that, I will make a lot of money. This was my you know my view seen through a kid of 18 years old, and not becoming a teacher. And the funny thing is, and that's kind of where karma always comes back, is I'm teaching. I'm coaching, and I work as an advisor. But a big part of my work and a big part of my joy is teaching. Something that when I was 18, I thought, no, that's not for me.
Thank you, Rene, for sharing that. So now you are into coaching. Let's ask, what drew you into coaching, even after decades in a high stake, what I'll call corporate career. So why coaching now?
Yeah. So there was a big shift for me when I was working as a family governance specialist for Citibank New York, and it happened many times. So I was kind of, I had the right skill set and the right technical knowledge to be pretty good at that job. But very often I was sitting with large families, and I remember this family I was sitting with in Chile, in the south of Chile. They were one of the largest salmon producers in the world, and they called me in to help them thinking about their succession planning. And not only I'm talking about the inheritance, but also the kind of the business succession and building legacy. And so, there was the patriarch, there were his sons. The patriarch, he was 75 years old, his son's 50 years old, and his daughters, all, MIT, Harvard, top education, and so on. And so we spoke about all those technical stuff, but I felt there was kind of an energy in the room that I was not answering. There was this elephant in the room standing about, there were emotional and psychological dynamics going on, and I couldn't get my finger around it, and I also didn't want to address it because I was, not skilled. I was scared that if I start talking about it, like, the patriarchy says something, well, I have the feeling that, I see that your kids might not completely agree with that, whatever kind of things. I was scared that I would be stepping literally on a landmine and it would explode in my face, and I lose the client for the bank. That would finish in a big fight, and I didn't know how to diffuse it. So that drove me into kind of trying to understand what creates emotions. You know, Learning tax law and doing an MBA at a great business school doesn't really teach you that. And so I started to study neuroscience just to try to understand what creates emotions. And once I went through that, and I got a better understanding of what's the neurological, what's happening neurologically that creates emotions. I started to study sociology to understand what makes people interact and what happens there. And then I topped it off with studying in high performance sports psychology to understand what creates high level of team effectiveness. So I went on this big goose chase of studying and acquiring knowledge in a realm of where I didn't work as a business developer, tax lawyer. I had no experience about that, but I got fascinated by it because I felt that I was not serving my clients at the best that I could. And then one day I met with a client in Stuttgart, a German client, patriarch, 80 years old. And he said to me, Rene, no, more than a father, I'm a coach to my kids. And that was for me a huge light bulb moment. There was kind of an aha moment, kind of coaching. And then I realized that, by studying coaching and becoming a coach, I could wrap all my skills, all my life experience. I call this the good, the bad, and the ugly. I could all wrap this in and emulate that as a coach. And I never looked back. There was a kind of a huge shift, and it's a fascinating journey. I mean, my life on is to work as a coach.
So, well, thank you for sharing that. When you say you work as a coach, what does that really mean? I want you to explain what a coach does so that people will understand how they can, gain from you when they want to work with you.
Yeah. So basically, what a coach does, and that's maybe different from therapy, is a coach looks looks at the person or works with a person, um, and without any judgment, without my ego in the game. It doesn't matter where this person is at this moment from a perspective of career or wealth or family. The person is as it is at this moment, and that's what we look at. And then we start talking about, where would you like to go to? What are your goals? What do you want to achieve? What didn't happen yet in your life that you would get at? And then we start trying to understand, what are the blind spots, what are the blockages that stops you from getting to that fulfillment. And so that's kind of a very, 30,000 feet view on what a coach does. And so you get into this creative, collaborative relationship with your client, where we believe that the client has all the answers within. We just need to unlock them and help to, to anchor that knowledge into real action. Because very often, I work with a lot of very, very smart people, and they come up with an issue, and they can, they read a book about the issue, they can explain the issue to me, what they're, dealing with. They have probably more knowledge about the issue that they're dealing with than me, but still they can't execute on it.
Yeah.
Why? Because there's an adaptive challenge that holds them back. And one of the biggest misconceptions that I have, for example, when I work with leaders, that very often leaders think, oh, I have to have the right answers,
Yeah.
right? The misconception is that, having the right answer. And coaching is about helping people to find those answers. And it is in reality, and coaching and leadership in this respect is kind of a similarity. Great leaders, they ask the right questions, and they listen deeply, and they create the conditions where others can perform at their best. And so coaching isn't about fixing people, it's about helping them see themselves more clearly, so they can tap into their strengths that they already have, but maybe haven't fully recognized or used.
Oh,
So, very often you hear the kind of seek the answer within, right? The truth is within. Well, it's true. We know, but
mhm.
very often we sabotage ourselves to bring that knowledge, to bring that wisdom into real action.
Now, thank you, Rene. In the beginning, you stated that you started your career working as a lawyer, then you transitioned into banking. You talked about how you pursue your passion. Now, to many people, there is a thin line between following our passion or following after money. I know you said, oh, the money should not be the main driver, but how do you balance it? Because, of course, you want to make as much money as possible, but I also know that you have to enjoy what you do. So, how
Yeah.
do you make the balance between
Yeah.
passion and money?
Yeah, and I think this is such a wonderful question, and it took me about 25 years to figure it out, um, and to figure out my truth. My truth doesn't have to be the truth for everybody, but we hear this all the time, right? Like, follow your passion.
Mm-hmm.
There's this whole theory around it, and basically I did that. I followed my passion many times, and many times I also burned my head doing that. But and there's this wonderful theory, and for sure you heard about it. It's kind of, you should, whatever you do in life, uh, you should think about, what do you like, what are
Mm-hmm.
you good at, what does the world need, and what's the world prepared to pay for. That's kind of the ideal set, right? So when
Right.
you say follow your passion, for sure there's truth in that. And doing what you love can be incredibly fulfilling. But over the years, I've learned something else, which is that passion alone doesn't get you there. What's just as important, and maybe even more important, is getting really clear on what you're good at. I call this your superpowers, and I work a lot in discovering my clients' superpowers. And these are the skills and abilities that you can deliver consistently, and those skills that other people can count on. Now, if you're lucky, what you love and what you're good at, they overlap. Now, then you get a sweet spot, right? That's kind of a place where the stars start aligning.
Mhm.
But often the work actually moves your career forward. It's a mix of your natural strengths. And when you work out of a space of natural strengths, even though the job at the beginning isn't financially that rewarding, but over time, when working out of that naturally strengths, I've seen that so many times over, and I've worked with more than 300 executive MBA students at the University of Chicago. And then you start applying that to something where where is a necessity and the world's prepared to pay for that. Then you create a circumstance where by being good at and feeling that reward coming back, it automatically will start creating well, passion, or it will start creating positive self-awareness about what you're doing. It starts creating a self-fulfilling reinforcement of, hey, people enjoy what I'm doing, I'm getting great feedback. And that is also what will start creating passion. So it doesn't start out of passion, but the passion grows in what you do by being really great and doing the things that you're really good at, because that is what builds trust and that opens doors, and that's what really keeps you moving. And and coming back, when I think of my time with the as a distinguished executive in resident with the executive MBA students at the University of Chicago, um, or the ones that made the biggest leaps, they weren't always the most in love with their work, but they were the ones who lined up what they enjoyed with what they excelled at, and then learned how to communicate it in a way that made people listen. And so there's this fine line, but my line shifted of, really think about what you're good at,
Mhm.
because that will give you fulfillment in your work, and then the passion grows towards it.
That's good. Thank you. I like what you said about superpower, about finding what we enjoy and what we are good at, and trying to merge the two so that we can actually excel. But I'm also still curious when you talk about superpower, that's something we are good at. How can people find out what they are actually what we can call their superpower? How can we find that out? Are there any
Yeah.
tips that you can share?
Yeah, there's an exercise I do, and it's a very simple exercise.
Hmm.
Everybody can do it.
Okay,
Okay.
that's good.
And it's basically what we do is, okay, make a list of what are your superpowers and the things that you're really good at.
Hmm.
I'm not talking about walking on water, right? Or walking through fire. I'm talking about what you're really good at. Maybe it's a language skill, maybe it's your communication, maybe it's writing, whatever. Start making a list of the things that you're really good at. It can be sports, it can be anything. Make a list. Make a list, your list. And then you ask somebody or several people that are close to you, your parents, your brothers, sisters, your best friends. You ask them,
Hmm.
hey, can you please? I'm working with this crazy coach. He asked me to make a list of my superpowers. What do you think are my superpowers?
Mm.
Now, don't ask that before you make your own list, right? Because you don't want to be influenced.
Yeah.
Because it's so interesting how we have this self narrative about ourselves, and we have no capacity often to see ourselves through the eyes of others. And this is so important in career. More important what you think about yourself is what other people think of you. That's weird, but that's where success is. And that's where often we have blind spots because we see ourselves in one way, the world sees ourselves another way. So ask people outside, people that know you well, can be colleagues, friends, family. Can you make a list of superpowers? And then start comparing. And the outcome is refreshing, it's relevating, it's super interesting. And then typically I work with my clients on that.
Oh, okay, so good. Now, you mentioned succession planning, and I have professionals, working professionals, that listen to this podcast, and they may be wondering how can they position themselves so that they will be considered when it comes to succession planning for leadership. Are there tips? Are there things that people can do so that when the next opportunity comes, their name will be mentioned?
Right. So I have a good tip, and it's something that people underestimate. And when I take this, when you think about succession planning, it's also kind of, career planning. I want to get to the position where my boss is. I know my boss is leaving. How can I be the one chosen? And one
Exactly.
of the things that people very often they do, so they manage upwards, right? They try to be in a best relationship, to be aligned with the boss, whatever. Very often that goes at the cost of being your own authenticity and whatever. But that's what happens a lot. I've seen this thousands of times that people they manage up, right? They don't manage down,
Mhm.
right? Very often they forget about their team, they manage up. And what I found out is that it's not necessarily the only way to go. There's something in big organizations which is very powerful when it comes to succession. It's called the HR department or the people's partners, as they very often call it nowadays. And so it is pretty important to go and find the person highest in the HR department that you can access to and start talking about your career. And you know what? They love it because they feel that they are recognized as a person, as people that can help them in their career. So go to the HR department, say, hey, I really would like to know what else is out there. I'm prepared to do the hard work. I've been in the company now for whatever, X amount of years. What do you recommend me? Can you be my mentor? Can you help me with coaching? Whatever, bring them into your thinking, and there's nothing wrong with that, and they feel rewarded. People love to be asked for advice. And now this is the interesting thing, and I've been many times around that table. So let's say you have a guy, John, right?
Mhm.
John would like to go up in his career. He finished some studies. He has a great track record, but he's not sure if he's recognized by
Mhm.
his boss, because there are some other pretty good guys also.
Right.
Guys, when I talk about guys, as men and women, okay,
Yeah.
uh, are there that could take this job. So John goes to HR department, and he starts talking with them and starts working with them, and they say, well, you should also do a little bit of this and that and such and so and whatever, and he complies and so on. Now comes the big management meeting where, and I've been in many times in management, you sit with other managers and division heads, whatever, around the table, and there's also the head of HR is there. And so these are kind of the meetings where you talk about bonuses, about the bonus pool, and you make your list, how much is going to whom, and so on. And also kind of promotions, title promotions, from a number 13 and number 14, or new career positions that come up, and who do we put in that slot. And so these managers, they're all talking about their crown princes, because we all in these big companies, we have our favorites and
Right.
we want them there. And then is the HR manager, and there's kind of a moment of dull in the conversation, silence, and he says, did you think about John? Silence, because John was not on the table.
Right.
What do you mean about John? Well, I mean, I have been, you know, having ins and outs with John. This is his track record. This is what he done. This is what he prepared for. This is what he's ready for. Blah blah blah, and so on. And you know what? It's so interesting, this dynamic. This is kind of the few moments that those HR managers they have really big power, big decision power, big convincing power, because the other managers that have their favorites, they don't really want to go at that moment against what the HR manager says, because this HR manager is also managing their career in some respect. So
Right.
bring in HR when you
Right.
think about career. That's the big takeaway.
No, that's very good. Thank you for sharing that. So, what's your approach to coaching like senior leadership? Because I believe you coach different categories of people depending on their stages in their career. So, how do you handle a senior leader when coaching them?
So, first of all, I try to gather as much data as possible. Data is really important, and I can do that the slow way, which is having deep conversations. Well, maybe let's one step back. It's really important when I work with a person that that person trust me that I can help him or her get to where they want to get at, right? There has to be trust. And we create that trusted space. Now, when we have that trusted space, we can have real conversations, not the superficial water cooler moments. And so I try to get data from my coachee, but I typically also to get more data quicker, I use assessment tools like Hogan or Briggs Myers and other assessment tools. And especially what I love to do is 360 interviews.
Mm.
So not a 360 where people get an electronic assessment because they will then fill them out in 5 minutes. But I interview the people around this senior executive, and typically I interview between 12 to 18 people. So it's a bit with 45 questions, half an hour to 1 hour each. Deep conversation because I don't want to know why they rate somebody as satisfactory.
Right,
Or that they rate a person satisfactory. I want to understand why they rate them as satisfactory and what would them get them to highly satisfactory, for example.
right.
So now I get real meat on the bone. And this is kind of, I make a big report on that, send it to my coachee, and based on that, we establish goals. And now the interesting thing with goals is, so my coachee says, whatever, I want to become a better listener, right? Maybe he's impatient, or people say he's very smart, great manager, but he never listens. Feedback, right? And so my coach, he recognized that and he says, I want to become a better listener. Now, the second step is what we do is we set up alignment meetings with the HR manager, that's probably the contracting partner, or my coach's boss,
Mhm.
to communicate those goals, not the reasons of the goals, not kind of, what is there stuck with my coach, but just kind of, hey, as a goal, I really realize I want to become a better listener. Why is this important? Well, first of all, that his boss knows what he's working on, but also that his boss can help him as an accountability partner. There's a meeting. Hey, John, I'm sorry for all the Johns in this world. John, I listened to your in the management meeting, and you want to work on listening, and I felt that you were very superficial. You were not really there. You were not deep listening, and so on. So that's an important thing, and also I challenge my coaches to communicate their goals with their team.
Oh, that's good.
So they know, and that's great because it also shows a bit of vulnerability, and that's important. That vulnerability became so much more important nowadays in modern management, and it's great to show up and say, hey, I'm not perfect,
Mhm.
and you know what, I can use some help as well.
Oh, that's good, Rene. So as we are wrapping it, you have a book, The Elephant in the Family Room. So, what's one takeaway from your book that you want people to know about the book?
One of the biggest takeaway is, and this is so human, is we have to be careful how we communicate because it's all about communication. And that's where, things go bad because people perceive whatever you say in one way and you wanted to say something else. And to have real communication, real conversations with other people. In this case, it's about family systems, but what happens, family systems, the same as in corporate teams, right? And and another thing is that careers, they aren't built on only skills and strategies. They're built on how well we navigate the human side of the work. And that's what got me so interested in all this what I'm doing and also writing this book, which is based on my whatever I don't know, 40 years of experience already. Didn't want to say that, but And so the human skills, that's what really that keeps you in the room at the table and in the conversations when opportunities arise. And there's this thought that I have is kind of, you know, it's important in work, in families, in friendships, and whatever to that people trust you, right? I mean, it's all about trust. And how do you build trust? It's not like, trust me. Oh, yeah. Okay, I trust you. You trust me? Yeah, I trust you. Okay, great. So we trust each other. Yeah, okay. Two thumbs up, right? It doesn't work like this. Trust, it starts with connecting with people. And how do you connect with people? Through communication. So it's communication builds connection, and builds connection builds over time, organically growing trust. And that's so important. And that's what my book about in many respects.
Thank you very much, Rene. So the book, The Elephant in the Family Room, Managing the Complexities of Legacy Businesses, is coming out August 19th and it's going to be available on Amazon. Thank you, Rene, for joining us today. We appreciate your time. It's been awesome having
Now,
you, and I enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Ola, it was the appreciation is with you for inviting me to your show. I saw many of your podcasts. They're outstanding. I feel humbled to be in the presence of the great invitees that have been on your show. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.